Great to see so many people and interested, diverse faces. And I'm here, and I'm happy to see you here, because I think this is a very important moment. It's an important moment in history, because it is an opportunity for us to demonstrate that the system which shapes all our lives, the system which is the root cause of the climate crisis, as it's named in the draft charter, that system is capitalism. And this is our moment to demonstrate that capitalism as a system is unjust and unsustainable. The injustice is evident in the savage inequalities we see every day, the expansionist drive of capitalism, which is going beyond ecological boundaries, although we've been warned about this ever since the Club of Rome report. That shows that not only is capitalism not sustainable, but it has driven us to the edge of extinction. So I think we have to face the fact that we are at a historical moment of tremendous opportunity of making a shift, a fundamental revolutionary shift to a different kind of society. But there are many, many, many people who are not with us in such a task. And some of them are people who are connected to coal, for example, and we have a powerful coal lobby in South Africa. Some of them are powerful in government, even in the cabinet. Some of them are business people who see the shift to renewable energy as a source for profit. And there are many people there are even many scientists, though I'm sure my friend Colleen is not one of them, who have been timid in warning us about the seriousness of the impact of climate change. All of these people are promoting the idea that we do not have to change radically, that we can have, the popular phrase is now, a just transition. And it's an important phrase because it implies something hopeful. But powerful people are shrinking that notion to simply mean a shift to renewable energy. And the point about a privatized renewable energy system, which is what's likely to happen, is that it does not necessarily create the jobs we need. It could well mean increased electricity prices for all of us, and it will certainly mean a lack of energy sovereignty, because the people driving that shift are going to be multinational corporations from overseas. So there are many, many obstacles in our path to recapture the notion of a just transition and to stimulate people to think of a real alternative way of living. A society which is just, and not simply just in the sense of giving pensions to retrenched workers, but in the sense of creating new ways of relating to nature, and the kind of institutions and arrangements that are emerging are signaling this new way of thinking about a future which is just and fair. There are arrangements to do with land, to do with water, to do with food. And my final point is simply to say that I once had the privilege of attending a conference of the American Sociological Association. It was addressed by Arundhati Roy. And she was addressing the question of whether an alternative to capitalism is possible. Because often people feel it is so powerful that it is impossible for us to argue for something completely different, whether we call it eco-socialism or not. And her answer was, if you listen carefully, an alternative is emerging. Listen carefully and you can hear it breathing. I like to think that this conference could give us all the same feeling. Thanks very much.
For those of you who don't know Jackie Cock, Jackie is one of the pioneers of environmental justice politics in South Africa, one of the co-founders of Earth Life Africa, and we are proud to also say she's a board member of the Cooperative and Policy Alternative Center convening this conference together with Food Sovereignty Allies. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Vishwas Satgar. I chair the board of COPAC. I'm also an academic at this university. Now, we've titled this conference 1.5 degrees Celsius Climate Justice Futures for South Africa, Utopia, Agency and Transformative Praxis. Big words. But there's something to this. This idea of 1.5 degrees Celsius is actually a red line. We cannot afford to overshoot 1.5 degrees Celsius. The global science and the global UN political process around climate has been shifting the goalposts consistently. And it is taking us into a very, very dangerous, unpredictable, and unhinging world. Now, I wear another hat here today. I lead a program at Wits University called Emancipatory Futures Studies in the Anthropocene. And it's a program, it's a new knowledge project, and it's really attempting to find pathways, solutions from below to the climate crisis. It's anchored in the idea that it is not the corporations or the states in the world that have the answers to big change. Actually, it is everyday citizens, it is movements, it is grassroots organizations and communities, what we call subaltern. Subaltern knowledge is what can shape this future. So the Emancipatory Futures Studies Project is also one of the co-funders of this conference, together with the Frederick Ebert Stiftung. Now, what we want to do with this conference is firstly talk to the science. And we've invited some of South Africa's leading climate scientists, unfortunately they're based at Wits University, to be with us to walk us through some of the scientific issues around climate change. For climate justice activism, for the politics, for the challenges we face, we have to keep the science front and center. And we've been saying that consistently throughout this process. So tornadoes drop down in KZN. What does that mean? Is this climate change? Is this the climate crisis? Is it the extreme weather patterns that the IPCC has been talking about? Our ongoing drought? Is this just the El Nino-induced cycle of drought in South Africa? Or is there some connection? Where are we going? What is the science saying about this big challenge, this dangerous challenge? So today, one of the things we want to do with this conference is really sink our teeth into the science. And as we go down this road, we're going to continually be engaging with the science. Each one of us as activists need to be, if you like, on board with the science. So that's going to be our first session today, and we have Professor Francois Engelbrecht, who's a climate modeler, who's worked with the IPCC. We have Professor Bob Scholes, he's meant to be joining us soon, who's also inputted into some of these global processes. And we have Professor Colleen Vogel, who also has been somebody working closely with the UN on the science and so on. The other thing we want to achieve with this conference is the affirmation that grassroots forces have a way forward around the climate crisis. This crisis, this challenge is as big as the apartheid challenge, if you like. The scale of change that we need, the transformation in our production, consumption, financing, and just living systems is big, it's profound. But we want to affirm in this conference that there are answers. And so sitting in this room is a wide spectrum of progressive South African society. We have trade unions in this room that are engaged seriously with the climate challenge. We have environmental justice organizations that have been raising this banner, this flag, trumpeting this issue for a long time. We have social justice organizations that have been confronting the legacies of deprivation, inequality, and so on for a long time. We have youth and children's organizations in this room. We have students who are also deeply unhinged, together with the young people, about their futures. There's this notion that many of us will die from biological aging, but the young people are saying we will die from climate change. And we have those young people in this room to help us think and grapple with this way forward. And we have many, many others. The physically disabled people's organizations are also with us, and so on. So we have an interesting gathering of forces that have been in conversation in a process. The COPAC team, I can assure you, is exhausted. We've had many, many constituency dialogues this year to really bring out that knowledge around the way forward, the answers to this big challenge. So today, each one of you will have a chance to shape the first draft climate justice charter for South Africa. It comes out of a 5-year process of campaigning around the food crisis and drought, and more intensive work we've done, which we'll highlight when we go to that panel session. So we're hoping to come out of this conference with a document like this, which will be a compass to where we should go. Our state, our ruling classes are failing us. You look at the IRP, well, I have nightmares, basically. Coal is still dominant. They are moving in the opposite direction, despite the signals coming from nature today. The third thing we want to do with this conference is actually focus on building on the momentum of climate justice activism. On September 20th, many of us rallied to the call of Fridays for Futures, Greta Thunberg, and the young children in our country. It was unprecedented, the kind of mobilization that happened across the country. In the world, there were about 4 million people on the streets. We cannot lose that momentum. And therefore, we are going to be having a conversation in this conference about how do we gridlock carbon in South Africa? How far do we go? Are we ready to be arrested? Are we ready to go to jail? What has to happen for us to really shift the trajectory towards system change? We've got to have these hard conversations. It cannot be imposed on anybody. But the doomsday clock is ticking. And as I said, the country is going in the opposite direction. The state, the parties are taking us in the opposite direction. Citizens' power has to come to the fore. We are tabling a program of action as COPAC, but the emphasis is on building solidarity and partnerships. We want to be able to stand with the environmental justice movements like Verja in the Vaal that has been fighting Sasol for a long time. We want to be able to rally forces together with the trade unions on May Day next year to make a powerful statement in this country. We want to rally with the rural communities that are still suffering the drought right now. Many of those activists are in this room from the front line. So these are some of the national moments of convergence that we are proposing, together with going to Parliament next year in Cape Town. But our approach to the conversation, and this is our appeal, is not to put a shopping list of tasks for COPAC to do. COPAC's not the movement. We are all the movement. We are the climate justice movement in South Africa. So what we want you comrades to do in the engagement around gridlocking carbon is to also tell us what you and your movement and your organization and your community is willing to do. Because that's the only way we're going to build. No one organization is going to lead or substitute for your agency and your power. So the conversation we are inviting in this space is a collective one that builds solidarity. And that's what we're hoping to achieve coming out of the engagements here today. The other issue up for debate and discussion is the challenge of building a climate justice movement in South Africa. Now, the climate justice movement found its voice and its place in the early 2000s in South Africa, but it builds on a history of environmental justice struggle. But that movement also has not been able to break through into the mainstream in South African society. As Jackie says, there are many that are not with us, there are many against us as well. And so we really have to rise to the challenge of how do we aggregate mass people's power. We are in a moment in history where there are forces on the horizon whose politics is all about polarization. They want to divide us based on race. They want to divide us based on class, on ethnicity, on nationalism. There's a second coming of fascism in the world, and it's even on the march in this country. There's a major danger to our democracy. So as we build this movement, we have to tackle the historical injustices of a racist past and racialized inequalities, gendered inequalities. But we also got to rise to the challenge of climate justice. And that means that those who are least responsible and who are carrying the costs need to be, if you like, at the center of having their interests met. So the climate justice conversation and movement building conversation we're going to be having here is, what is the next big step? What is the next big leap that we all have to take together? The drought-affected communities cannot fight the struggle by themselves. The food sovereignty campaigners cannot fight the food system by themselves. The trade unions cannot fight job losses by themselves and the restructuring challenges that come with that. The faith-based communities cannot just give hope based on cosmology, on doctrine, on religion, and ethical belief by themselves. We all have to come together and we have to find a way forward. So that's another big issue for the conversation over the next 2 days. Now, we have tried to resource you with a few things. One of them is this document, the Climate Justice Charter, hot off the press. And I must just add in an apology for Jane Cherry, the executive manager of COPAC, whose artwork you see here. Jane has had a personal crisis and she just couldn't be here this morning, but she's going to try and join us tomorrow. But this is her hard work and it arrived here on time. We also have a document called Climate Justice Agency, #Gridlock Carbon, the proposal for 2020, also in your pack if you like. We have a document called Transformative Networking Building for Climate Justice Movement, also to inform the substantive discussions around this question. We also have these think pieces, Climate Justice Charter think pieces. So in the journey to get here, besides the hunger tribunals and the drought speak outs and the bread marches and the protesting outside SANEF and outside SASOL and so on and all the street politics and all the demands and all the noise we've made, we also ask activists to write for this process, to tell us what they think the solutions are based on their work. So if you've been working on seeds, we've invited activists to write for us. If you've been working on fighting fossil fuel subsidies and divestment, we've asked activists to write for us. So we've curated these think pieces, we shared them as part of the build-up to this process to again empower conversation, stimulate thinking, debate, etc. So this is a resource, comrades. Feel free also to take this down to the ground. Finally, to say this, comrades, that this is a processual politics, meaning that we are not building through an event, okay? This is the hard, long march through civil society. That's what we are about here. And in this process, we are trying to build our capacities to understand this complex, big challenge, but we are also building the confidence to articulate a vision, a new horizon for change, to articulate a new set of answers for the country, and to bring a new language to politics, and ultimately a new practice of climate justice. Amandla.